You know how I love my chains and I can do them forever? Heat come from under more, so I'm using my, at least starting to look like a bracelet. And now it's inspection time. We have to check where we have to sand. Removing patina, it's not fun at all. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we will do a bracelet and we will make a chain for it. And we will put a very gorgeous turquoise in it. So for this project, we will be using the same D-shaped wire, patterned one, which we made from last projects I was showing you here. So if you haven't seen that, you have to come back and check it out because I showed you how to make that D-shaped wire with the pattern. And we will use that for chain links. And yes, I'm looking this way because I made a bit of example for me. I have to test few links and then I'm like, okay, we can do that. You know how I love my chains and I can do them forever. So I'll show you what stone we have today. This beautiful triangle turquoise. For this one, I'm thinking to do thinner bezel because when it comes to turquoise itself, they're pretty fragile stones sometimes when it comes to stone setting. So enough talking about that and let's do this. When we have a thicker wire, especially when it's not round wire, we have to prepare the end of it just to go in that small hole that we have on our jump ring maker. That makes easier to roll it and not to lose a lot of silver. Make sure you're rolling pretty slow and unwrap it as well because it has a spring back and we don't want to get injured here. We're drawing a straight line through all the jump rings just to keep cutting more accurate and keep the same size of all of the jump rings. The beginning of sewing itself is pretty complicated. It's always jumping around with a saw and I always try to keep it as steady as possible just to have the straightest cutting that I could have, because more straight we go in this part, the easier other parts will be. Now I'm showing you how I'm correcting all the joints if it's not flush, because we want as flush as it can be. No gaps here. Check on the light, the window you have, just not to see any light coming through. And now the soldering part. Here I'm using liquid borax. It's like green liquid and I always work with that. Sometimes I work with traditional borax, white one from the comb, but usually when I run out of this. And it's always the most exciting part is just to solder everything, at least for me. I really love to solder. Maybe that's why I'm doing a lot of chains, I don't know. But here you can see how long the process is actually, because you have to go around more on these jump rings because we have quite thick wire to work with. So that's why it takes way longer. And go in circles itself, make sure that we're heating the jump ring evenly and our solder will flow perfectly. Now we're collecting all the jump rings in one piece, just not to have all that fussing in our pickle pot. And just put that in the pickle while it gets cleaned. And now it's inspection time. We have to check where we have to sand our jump rings because we got some solder, some plier marks because it was harder to join these kind of jump rings because we have even a pattern on it. We have D-shaped wire, so it gets some plier marks as well. So we have to sand everything before stretching, because after it will be way harder to get rid of any marks. And now we're making links for our bracelet because why not? To make it even more spicy. For the links itself, usually I choose round wire because even in the video you can see it's way easier to wrap this and get along with sewing as well, because round wire is Just it's way easier to work with. If you are a very beginner, I would suggest just take round wire in the beginning parts because it will be way easier. And on the round links, we are working with 1.3 millimeter round wire and number 6 on a jump ring maker. And now when we have all the links, we can come to a fun part where we are collecting our bracelet, which is very exciting. We're joining our patterned links with round links, and finally our bracelet is looking, at least starting to look like a bracelet. Something is about that joining for me. I'll just come into a right place. And because we have to interrupt our bezel setting in this chain as well, we're splitting that into 2 parts and starting to solder. But look at that chain. It does look nice already. Nobody said no, so we're just soldering now. Now I'm showing you one way how you can do that. With the third hand, it's always a big help because you have full control where you're soldering and where that solder is flowing. But if you want to solder in this way, if it's laid down, you have to be more careful and focus the flame on the jump ring itself. And when we solder all jump rings from 2 parts of the bracelet, we will be starting to make a bezel setting for our turquoise, or I don't know what kind of stone you're working with. As you saw, I chose a triangle turquoise stone because we have to set all the shapes that we can, right? Corners always are more challenging, but when you start to feel a groove, when you have more experience in making those, it won't be such a problem because you will always know how to bend it in place. I'm just showing you one way how to do that. Of course, there is way more. If you have a thicker bezel setting, you have to prepare that with your saw first just to bend it, but we will do that later on the channel. And now we are soldering our bezel setting and doing that again on the back plate. Always make sure that it is a flush with a back plate, then you won't have any problem with soldering and that solder will flow very nicely in your joints. I like to lift my piece for that we could make that heat come from under more, so I'm using my mesh. But to be honest, usually I just lift it with my soldering pick and do it that way. Now I have to saw all that bezel setting out, and if you want to keep the edge, you can keep it and use a thicker Sharpie for that, just to draw a line and cut it. Although for this one I chose not to have any edge on my sides and saw it out fully. After sawing, we have to start to sand everything and make it as one piece and no gap showing, so we have to make a good soldering job first to not have any line on that flat edge and maybe make even a mirror shine, so we will see. We have to do filing job first just to get rid of a lot of material because we have to get rid of some edge which left after the sawing, and then we go to a sanding process where we are just erasing all the lines that we don't want to see. You can see from a video, it takes some time. I'm just speeding that up for you. And in this part, I'm just not showing you, but I'm going through all the grids until I reach something like 500, 600, because we will be soldering more and I have more of ways how to polish my piece later, so I keep it more on the grungy side. Because fire scale happens and sometimes you have to get back to lower grids as well. So yeah, it really depends on a piece and even the day sometimes with the soldering. Now you see how I'm preparing my jump rings, which will be under the bezel setting, just to have a bit of solder there and then solder the bezel plate on it. For that, it really helps to have a honeycomb under, because you can see how accurate you can be according to those lines on a honeycomb. Now we have to prepare our bracelet for stone setting, so we're polishing everything. I chose to have a mirror shine on a bezel setting, so now we have to polish that a lot just to have that mirror shine, and keep all the chain with the pattern more on that satin, I would say, because it just looks better with a pattern on. I really enjoy to work with these wheels because it's like dry sanding with a lot of uniform in it as well. It's hard to explain, but after you work with these, it's hard to get back. And sometimes it depends on the piece itself. Not always I'm using these, but pattern chains or just chains, it's very nice because it gets into places and you can finish that off with tripoli and rouge as well. I like to use different kind of compounds, so I have variety of them. But tripoli and rouge, it's kind of classic. Some says that it's a bit of old school, but it works, so why not? And it's cheap as well. And with wheels, I always work on the lowest speed. Okay, now we have a beautiful mirror shine setting, and we have a beautiful chain going. It really looks stunning. And now I'm like very intrigued with patina. Patina on this chain or not? I don't know. Because as you know, I'm not a fan of patina. One time I did put patina on. Okay, not even one time. I did put patina on and I didn't like it and I had to remove it. And if you know, removing patina, it's not fun at all. So I don't want to do the same mistake. Now we will prepare the setting for the stone to go in. We will see how it's looking. Maybe we don't want patina then anymore. So we will see. Because we have higher setting, higher stone. For the pattern, it won't get in a way to put patina on, because I would put that just on the pattern if I would. We will prepare the top part of the bezel, you know the drill, and we will set the stone in. After preparing the bezel setting on 1000 grit, as I always do, and of course evening out that bezel as well, because after all that polishing, it's getting not even on all the sides around, so you have to make sure to do that. I will link my other video where I'm talking more in depth how I'm setting the stone in this kind of setting with even thicker bezel as well. So we're moving more quick here, and always finishing everything with a pumice wheel because it just glides everything in place and make sure that we have a really beautiful edge going. Just be careful not go with that on your stone. All right, we are done here. We did such a great job. And now we have a gorgeous bracelet with our chain, our unique own chain. You know, I really do love a good custom piece, and especially if it's a good custom chain as well. So we have a gorgeous bracelet, and I really hope you like it, and I will see you in my next one.